Okay, hi, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. This is a recorded session for the digestive system, part 1. For the lesson outcomes, at the end of this topic, you will be able to recognize and explain evolutionary adaptation in a variety of animals for specific food types and feeding mechanism. And then you must discuss 5 fundamental activities of the digestive system, giving an example of each, identify the various parts of the digestive system, and the last, explain how carbohydrates, protein, and lipids, protein, lipids, and nucleic acid are digested into their component nutrients. So we go first into type of feeding. There are 3 types of feeding: herbivore, carnivore, omnivore. And each of these category of diet, they have different types of feeding mechanism. Feeding mechanism referring to the way this organism is getting their food. The first is by suspension feeders, followed by substrate feeders, fluid feeders, and bulk feeders. So let's go into suspension feeders. So in suspension feeders, the organism sieves small food particles from the water. From the word sieve here means to filter. Okay, sieve means to filter. For example, we have clams and oyster. They use gills to trap the tiny morsel. Morsel referring to the small particle of food. And for baleen whales, they have baleen plates. Okay, so these baleen plates are used to filter the food from the water rather using their teeth. And then the second type of feeding mechanism is fluid feeders. These organisms suck the nutrient from the fluid from the living host. So this group of organisms, they must have a mouth part that is adapted to pierce or rip skin or leaf tissue. Pierce means to penetrate. So the leech, for example, and the mosquito, they must have some adaptation to their mouth part to make sure that they can penetrate into the skin of the animal, or in aphid, they will tap into the phloem of the plant. So this aphid referring to any small bugs. Small bug, we call them as aphid. And why they tap onto the phloem? Because phloem is the transport channel for the food of the plant. So inside the phloem, there is sucrose and also amino acid that act as the food sources of the plant. That's why this bug, they tap on the phloem. And the third is substrate feeders. So this kind of organism that use the substrate feeding, they live in or on their food sources. For example, caterpillars, okay, they live on the leaf to get the food from the leaf. Meanwhile, for earthworms, they live inside the soil to get all the decaying organic material as their food source. Okay, let's see into the last feeding mechanism, bulk feeders. So this kind of organism, they eat, okay, large pieces of food, and then to get into their food, they must have diverse utensils that used for prey capture, for killing the prey, and also for piercing the meat of the prey. Okay, for example, the utensils are tentacles, the claws, the poisonous fangs, jaws, and teeth. Okay, so these are the utensils that used by the bulk feeders organism to get their food. Okay, so that's all for the digestive system part 1. We will continue to the digestive system part 2 later. Thank you.